One morning at a Florida Wildlife Recovery Center, a female elephant named Luna stopped cold in front of a glass wall because an other elephant was staring back. Everyone thought it was simple curiosity, until Luna pressed her trunk to the surface like she was trying to pull someone through, then panicked when staff tried to cover it. This wasn't a harmless mirror. It was a doorway to a buried memory, and Luna was reaching for someone she lost. Dawn laid long, cool shadows across the Gulf Coast Wildlife Recovery Center, turning chain link and palmetto fronds into stripes of light. In the largest yard, Luna stood quiet as a monument, a young African elephant with a broken tusk and old rope scars. She breathed in salt air and wet earth, listening, as if testing whether this morning was truly safe for her. Eli Parker kept the gate cracked, speaking low so the radios wouldn't spook her. He'd been the hands that rinsed hurricane mud from her hide, the one she trusted, enough to take apples from. Today, he wasn't leading her to water or meds, just into a new enclosure with fresh sand, calmer corners, a slow fan turning overhead, and a wall that shone like morning water. The panel looked like glass, set into a frame of steel, meant for observation during exams. Overnight, someone had pulled the protective curtain aside, and the rising sun hit it at the perfect angle. From where Luna stepped, it wasn't a window at all. It was a flat pond of light, bright and still, holding the full shape of an elephant, crisp as a photograph. Luna halted so fast dust puffed around her feet. Her ears flared wide, and her trunk lifted, tasting the air for breath that wasn't there. A low rumble rolled from her chest, not a warning, not a greeting, something in between. The elephant in the shining surface lifted her trunk too, matching the motion like a shadow that had learned to live beside her. Eli's smile flickered. He'd seen Luna curious before, about hoses, ladders, even her blurred reflection in a spoonful of rain after storms. This was different. She wasn't playing. She took one careful step, then another, and stopped again, weight rocking forward, as if the space between them could snap shut like a trap with teeth the moment she trusted it. The mirror elephant stood the same distance away, perfect and silent. Luna swayed once, then steadied, her gaze locked on the other's eyes. She angled her head, showing the jagged place where her left tusk ended, and the twin in the glass showed the same wound back to her without flinching. For a heartbeat, Luna looked almost offended, and then wary, like she'd been challenged. A breeze pushed through the yard. The reflection didn't ripple. Luna's trunk reached out, slow as tidewater, and hovered inches from the surface. Eli held his breath. He could hear the soft click of a camera in the control room, and somewhere far off, gulls arguing over breakfast. Luna's nail-like trunk tip trembled, choosing courage over caution at the last second. Then she touched the glass. The sound was small, skin to cold pain, but Luna reacted like it rang out across the whole facility. She jerked back, and her foot scraped the pad, leaving a crescent in the sand. Her eyes stayed fixed on the other elephant's trunk, pressed to the same spot, as if it could feel her through the barrier and answer back with warmth. Luna leaned forward again, drawn by something she didn't understand. This time she lifted her trunk to her own forehead, tracing the faint scar above her right eye, a mark from a crate bolt years ago. The elephant in the glass did it too, exactly. Luna froze, processing the impossible. The stranger was copying her before she finished moving, like it knew her thoughts and wanted inside them. Eli whispered, "Hey, girl. It's okay." He kept his hands flat, palms down, the way Dr. Megan had taught him, and stayed outside the line she hated crossed. Luna didn't look back. Her breathing slowed for a moment, almost calm, as if a puzzle had clicked into place. In the control room, a monitor showed her heart rate steadying, still high, but no longer climbing. Not yet. And then the calm cracked. Luna's ears twitched, and her eyes darkened like weather rolling in from the Gulf. The rumble in her chest deepened, turning raw, urgent. She took a half step back, then surged forward again, trunk pressing hard to the glass, as if she needed to push through it. The other elephant pressed back, unyielding, trapping her in her own strength and confusion. Metal clinked behind Eli, a latch, a careless shift, and Luna startled hard. Her body tensed, muscles bunching under her skin, and she swung her head toward the sound, then snapped back to the reflection, trapped between fleeing and staying. She rocked once, twice, a tight sway that wasn't comfort anymore. For the first time, Eli saw fear not in her stance, but in her eyes, sharp and suddenly young. From the walkway, old Joe, the night gatekeeper, paused with his coffee cup and stared. He didn't speak, just watched Luna's stiff posture and the way her trunk curled tight to her chest, a defensive fold he'd seen in elephants long ago. Luna faced the shining wall again, and the yard went unnaturally quiet, as if everyone was waiting for her next breath, and for the stranger in the glass to move. Morning settled into a steady hum at the center, fans turning, hoses hissing somewhere out of view, a distant forklift backing up with a soft beep. Luna stayed planted in the sand, angled toward the shining panel, her breath visible in the slight flare of her trunk. The yard felt wide, but her world had narrowed to one flat, bright surface. Eli eased a step to the side, keeping his shoulders low, not blocking her line of sight. He'd learned that Luna hated being crowded when she was thinking. On the walkway, Dr. Megan Hart arrived with her tablet tucked to her chest, hair pulled back, eyes already scanning Luna's posture the way some people read storm clouds. From behind the observation glass, the control room lights were dimmed so the staff wouldn't become another reflection. A small camera blinked red. Dr. Megan watched the live feed, heart rate elevated, breathing shallow, ears held wide. Not dangerous yet, she told herself. Not yet. The problem with elephants was that, not yet, could change in a second. Luna leaned in again, trunk sliding up the smooth pane, leaving a faint smear like fog on a window. Her eyes tracked the other elephant's trunk with fierce attention, as if she expected it to move on its own. When it didn't, Luna made a sound so low it could be mistaken for the building settling, then lifted her chin, testing the stranger's patience. The reflection answered by copying every motion, and that perfect obedience seemed to irritate her. Luna's tail flicked once. She stepped back, then forward, then back. Again, as if measuring the distance needed to make contact without losing control. Eli's hands hovered near a bucket of treats, but he didn't offer anything. She wasn't hungry. She was searching. A gust of sunlight brightened the panel, sharpening the image. Luna blinked hard, and for a moment her eyes looked glassy, unfocused. Her trunk curled tight toward her chest, then shot out again, pressing to the pane with urgency. The sound that came out of her throat wasn't a trumpet now. It was a strained, broken call, like a question she didn't expect the world to answer. Dr. Megan's voice was calm over the radio, but the words were clipped. No sudden movement. Keep the gates clear. She signaled for the sliding barrier to be ready, a precaution that felt cruel and necessary at the same time. Luna's shoulders lifted as she inhaled, and the whole yard seemed to inhale with her, waiting to see if she would bolt or break. Luna spun halfway to the right, then snapped back, toward the glass as if pulled by a rope. Sand sprayed from under her feet. She paced 3 steps, circled, returned, and pressed her trunk to the pane again. Approach, recoil, return. An ugly loop tightening like a knot. The other elephant followed perfectly, trapping Luna inside her own rhythm. Eli tried the one thing that sometimes helped. His voice. Luna, hey, I'm right here. He kept it soft, the tone of an older man telling a scared child there's nothing under the bed. Luna didn't look at him. She didn't look anywhere but the eyes in the glass, and those eyes were starting to look like they belonged to a much smaller elephant. Her ears trembled. The trunk tip shook, just once at first, then in quick, uneven pulses. Luna leaned her forehead toward the pane, not touching, hovering a fraction of an inch away, like she was afraid the cold would bite. Then she bumped the glass with a dull thud, more desperate than aggressive, and immediately flinched, as if she'd hurt someone. Old Joe set his coffee down on the railing, forgotten. He watched Luna's sway, tight and fast, not the slow rocking of boredom, and his face went pale. "That ain't curiosity," he muttered, not into the radio, just to himself. "That's remembering." The word hung in the air like dust motes you can't brush away. Dr. Megan made a quick decision. "We end it." The team slid the barrier partway, opening space so Eli could guide Luna back without forcing her. Eli stepped forward with a bucket, shaking it lightly, offering sound before reward. Luna's head turned a few degrees, then snapped right back to the glass, as if leaving meant losing something she'd just found. When Eli coaxed her, Luna allowed a single step away, then swung back again, trunk reaching out, frantic, to touch the pane one more time. The smear of her breath clouded the reflection and cleared, clouded and cleared, like a heart trying to settle. Finally, she stood a yard back, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the other elephant, as if begging it to follow her out. The yard quieted. Dr. Megan lowered her tablet, jaw tight with worry she didn't show in front of staff. Luna didn't charge, didn't collapse, didn't scream again. She simply stood there, trembling less now, staring into that bright, still pond of light, caught between relief and loss, as if she'd opened a door in her mind and couldn't quite shut it. By late morning, the heat rolled in, thick and heavy, and the sun shifted enough that the panel dulled from a perfect mirror to a softer shine. Luna should have drifted to the shade like she usually did, dust-bathing and dozing with one eye half closed. Instead, she stayed near the glass, as if her feet were anchored to that strip of sand. Eli kept his distance, but didn't leave the yard. He set a water trough closer than normal, then stepped back. Luna drank only a little, lifting the water with her trunk rather than lowering her face, careful not to catch even a faint reflection on the surface. It was a habit he'd noticed before and never understood. Today, it felt like a warning he'd missed. Dr. Megan returned with a small team and a quieter plan. No tests, no equipment rolled in, no crowd, just observation and safety. She asked for the curtain that should have covered the glass to be pulled down, and a technician went to the track, only to find the cord jammed, twisted tight like someone had yanked it in a rush. While they worked on it, Luna shifted closer again. Her trunk lifted, tasting the air, then pressed flat to the pane where the reflection's trunk met hers. The contact points weren't random. She kept touching the same 3 spots, low, then high, then off to the left, like she was counting positions that mattered, checking for someone who should be standing there. The loop returned, slower but sharper. She would approach, freeze, and recoil with a deep rumble that shook the sand. Then she'd circle, back, shoulders tense, eyes locked, as if drawn by an invisible line. Each cycle seemed to pull her deeper, and each return looked less like curiosity and more like need. A sudden clatter from the maintenance cart made Luna startle. She swung her head, and her broken tusk flashed like a chipped blade. For one breath Eli thought she might bolt. But she didn't run from the sound. She ran back to the glass, pushing her trunk hard against it, breathing fast, as though the other elephant was the only safe thing left. Old Joe watched from the walkway, hands gripping the rail. "She's calling," he said, louder this time, so Dr. Megan could hear. "Not warning calls, not play. That's the kind you hear when one gets separated." His eyes stayed on Luna's mouth, on the shape of the rumbles, like he was reading lips in a language most people didn't know existed. Dr. Megan felt the yard tilt in her mind. Separation. Loss. The word didn't belong in a neat rehabilitation schedule, but it fit the way Luna kept returning, the way she refused to let go. Megan motioned for everyone to widen the space around Luna, giving her room to breathe, room to decide, room to not be trapped by human hands. They tried again with the curtain. The cord finally gave, and the fabric slid down halfway, dimming the reflection into a shadow. Luna stiffened, panic flaring, and she charged 2 steps forward before stopping herself. Her trunk slapped the cloth once, then again, like she was knocking on a door that had been slammed in her face. Eli stepped in with the calmest voice he had. "Easy, girl. Easy." He held up a burlap sack she liked to tear apart. Something familiar, something safe. Luna's eyes flicked to him for the first time in hours, just a glance, then snapped back to the fading image, as if she didn't trust safety when it meant losing the only clue she had. The team held still, letting the moment stretch. Luna's breathing slowed by a fraction. She leaned her forehead toward the covered glass, not touching, hovering close enough that her eyelashes almost brushed the fabric. A low sound rolled out of her, softer now, more broken than angry, like a name whispered into darkness. Dr. Megan signaled to stop lowering the curtain. Half mirror, half shadow. A compromise that felt wrong and necessary. Luna backed away a single step, then stood there, swaying faintly, her trunk curled inward. She looked less like an animal facing a stranger, and more like someone standing at the edge of a memory. When the staff finally drifted back to their posts, the yard stayed tense and quiet. Luna remained near the covered panel, watching the dim shape of herself, as if waiting for it to become someone else. Old Joe didn't move from the walkway. He just shook his head once, slow, and said, almost kindly, "That poor girl's been holding on to something a long time." Afternoon light turned amber, and the air smelled faintly of cut grass and warm metal. The covered panel sat like a closed stage curtain, half lowered, half refusing to settle. Luna stood a few yards away, calmer on the surface, but the tension in her shoulders never fully released. Every few minutes, her trunk lifted, searching, then curled back in as if she didn't dare reach. Old Joe asked Dr. Megan for a minute alone at the fence. He kept his voice low, the way older folks do when they don't want the story to get ahead of them. "I've seen that look," he said, eyes still on Luna. "Not in the wild. In backlots, loading docks, places where elephants learn to swallow panic, 'cause nobody cares." Dr. Megan didn't argue. She'd studied behavior in textbooks, but Joe carried his knowledge in his face and hands. He pointed gently, not accusing, toward Luna's scars, faint lines around her ankles, a pale mark near her shoulder. "Those don't come from storms," he said. "Those come from being told where to stand and when to stop." Eli listened from a few steps back, jaw tight. He hated the idea of Luna having a life before them that nobody wanted to talk about. She'd arrived filthy and exhausted after Hurricane Celeste, eyes dull, body trembling like she'd been vibrating for days. The paperwork called her abandoned property. Eli had called her baby, even though she wasn't. Old Joe told them something the facility hadn't put in any intake form. Years ago, he'd worked security for traveling shows up and down the Gulf states. He remembered the tricks: floodlights angled just right, wet concrete that turned into a mirror, glass panels set behind crowds so animals saw movement and got confused. "Sometimes the reflection's the worst part," he said. "It makes them think they're never alone, until they are." Luna stepped closer to the half-covered glass and stopped. Her trunk rose to the same 3 points again, low, high, left, like she was checking for bodies in a lineup. She pressed the pad of her trunk to the cloth where the mirror used to be brightest, and the rumble she made turned softer, almost pleading. Old Joe's shoulders sagged like the sound hit him in the ribs. "That's a roll call," he said, voice rough. "That's what they do when somebody doesn't answer." He didn't need a degree to hear it. It was an old grief sound, deep and steady, not anger, loss. Dr. Megan felt a cold clarity settle in. This wasn't just stress. It was separation, coded into muscle memory. A light rain started, sudden and brief. Florida style. Drops peppered the sand, and tiny puddles formed along the fence line. Luna noticed immediately. She shifted her weight and took a careful step around the slick patch, as if the water itself could bite. Eli watched her detour and felt his stomach twist. She was avoiding reflections, even when the panel was hidden. Dr. Megan asked a tech to pull up footage from the past month. Not to hunt for a dramatic clip, but to find a pattern. Within minutes, the screen filled with small choices Luna had made that no one had called odd until now. Drinking with her head turned, skirting puddles, pausing at windows, and then backing away. It wasn't random. It was consistent, almost practiced. Outside, Luna moved toward the trough again, thirsty from the heat. She lifted water with her trunk and poured it into her mouth without ever lowering her eyes to the surface. When a breeze smoothed the trough into a faint mirror, she flinched and stepped back. The reflex was quick, automatic, like pulling a hand from a hot stove. Old Joe rubbed his palms together, as if trying to warm them. "If she's scared of her own face," he said, "it's 'cause her own face was there the day something happened, something she can't shake." Dr. Megan swallowed hard, thinking of triggers, of the mind's way of stapling images to pain so they never separate. Eli's voice came out smaller than he meant. "What do we do?" Dr. Megan looked at Luna, at her size, her strength, her stubborn gentleness, and then at the half-covered panel that had started all this. "First," she said, "we keep her safe." She motioned for the team to stay quiet, to keep tools out of sight, to move slow like they were sharing space with a storm. As the rain stopped and the sky cleared, the panel brightened again around the edge of the curtain. Luna noticed the returning shine and took one step forward, then stopped herself, breathing fast but controlled. She stood there in the golden light, caught between fear and fascination, and Dr. Megan realized the problem wasn't the mirror at all. The problem was what the mirror was connected to. Somewhere in Luna's past, a reflection had become a doorway, and now, with one wrong angle of sunlight, that doorway had cracked open, quietly, terribly, right in the middle of a place that was supposed to feel like home. That evening, after the last feeding rounds, Dr. Megan Hart stayed in her office with the lights low and the blinds half closed. Outside, frogs started up in the drainage ditch like an old choir warming up. Luna's rumbles still echoed in Megan's ears, steady and aching, as if the yard had carried a voice into the building and left it there. She opened Luna's intake folder, expecting the usual. Storm rescue notes, weight charts, vaccination dates, photos of mud-caked skin. The file was thick, but the details felt thin. The way paperwork does when nobody wants to write down what really happened. Megan scrolled past forms, stamped temporary hold, past signatures that looked rushed, and stopped at a section labeled Recovery Site. The location wasn't a forest or a preserve. It was a strip of land outside Clearwater, a forgotten roadside attraction listed as Coastal Kingdom Family Park, closed. The report mentioned flood damage, broken fences, and an empty animal pen behind the main stage. Luna had been found there, alone, exhausted, walking in tight circles like she'd been pacing a line nobody else could see. A paragraph lower, one line made Megan's stomach drop. Subject resisted relocation for 42 minutes, stayed fixed beside ornamental basin. The basin was described as a shallow concrete pool meant for fountain shows, still holding rainwater after the hurricane. The rescuer noted it in passing, like scenery, but Megan could picture it. Flat water, smooth as glass, catching a perfect reflection. She pulled up the rescue photos. In one, Luna stood with her front feet planted at the pool's edge, trunk hanging down, eyes fixed on the surface. In another, a rescuer's hands were on a rope, trying to coax her away, and Luna's body leaned back as if the rope was pulling her from something precious. Megan zoomed in until the pixels blurred, searching for what Luna might have seen. Old Joe's voice came back to her. Wet concrete, floodlights, mirrors in places you don't expect. Megan clicked into attached notes from local officers who'd secured the site. They mentioned a busted trailer, abandoned equipment, and a sign half torn down. One officer wrote, "Looked like they left in a hurry." No explanation, no names, just absence. Megan sat still for a long minute, listening to the air conditioner cycle on and off. A reflection didn't create pain on its own. It only borrowed pain already stored. If Luna had been glued to that basin after the storm, then the basin wasn't just water to her. It was a screen, a stage, a place where something had happened and never finished happening. She dug deeper, calling up archived county records, old inspection logs, a faded newspaper clipping tucked into the file like someone couldn't let it go. The park had been investigated years earlier for animal welfare complaints. Most of it was redacted, settled, forgotten, but one line survived. 2 elephants listed, one transferred, second unaccounted for. Megan felt the room grow colder, even though the thermostat hadn't changed. 2 elephants, 1 gone, 1 left behind. She remembered Luna's pattern at the glass, touching low, high, then off to the left, as if tracing where someone else should have stood. The other elephant in the reflection wasn't a stranger at all. It was a missing piece. The next morning she brought Eli into her office before the day got loud. She didn't dramatize it. She laid the photos on the desk and let him look. Eli's face tightened, eyes lingering on the picture of Luna at the basin's edge. "That's why she won't drink like normal," he whispered, as if saying it louder might break something. Megan nodded, careful with her words. "It could be a trigger," she said, "a sight that pulls her back." Eli looked down at his hands, remembering how Luna had pressed her trunk to the half-covered panel like she was trying to reach through it. He'd thought she was confused. Now, it looked more like a reunion she kept missing by inches. Later, Megan walked the corridor toward the night monitor room, where the screens showed Luna under moonlight. Luna stood near the curtain-covered glass, not frantic now, just fixed. Her silhouette was massive and still, like a ship refusing to leave harbor. Every so often her trunk lifted toward the panel and paused, hovering, as if waiting for a second shadow to appear beside her own. Old Joe met Megan at the rail with a thermos in his hands. She told him what she'd found, and he listened without interrupting, eyes never leaving Luna. When Megan mentioned the ornamental basin, Joe's mouth flattened into a hard line. "Seen that place," he said quietly. "Used to have lights that hit the water just right. Made ghosts out of living things." The pieces didn't form a neat picture yet, but they formed a direction, and that was worse in its own way. A mirror hadn't introduced Luna to herself. It had introduced her to the moment she first understood she was alone. And now the question wasn't whether Luna recognized her reflection. The question was who Luna was still looking for every time she stared into the glass, and what she had been forced to watch disappear on a surface that reflected everything, including her own face. The next afternoon, Dr. Megan brought old Joe to the storage room, where the center kept donated gear and old case files. Dusty boxes were stacked like quiet witnesses. Luna stayed outside in her yard, but her presence filled the building anyway. Every rumble she made seemed to travel through the concrete. Joe moved slow, like he was walking through a memory. He asked to see the park's name again. When Megan said, "Coastal Kingdom," Joe's eyes narrowed, and he let out a breath through his nose. "Lord," he murmured, "I worked a few nights there, not proud of it." He didn't sound angry, so much as tired, the way older folks sound when they remember a place they wish had never existed. Joe described the stage behind the animal pens, bright floodlights, cheap music, and a shallow fountain basin out front for effects. During shows, the staff would hose down the concrete to keep dust down and make the lights look prettier. That wet floor turned into a mirror you couldn't escape. To a nervous animal, it wasn't just slick. It was a second world under their feet. Megan asked about elephants, and Joe hesitated. He said there had been 2 females, a bigger one that acted like the anchor, and a younger one that followed her shadow. The older elephant would stand left of center, always, like she owned the space. The younger one, Joe believed that was Luna, would keep her trunk tucked close until the older one touched her shoulder. He told them about the night a storm warning rolled in and the crowd still demanded a show. Wind was already snapping flags and bending the palms, but management pushed it anyway. The lights were turned up too bright, and the wet floor gleamed like a lake. Joe remembered the elephant's eyes in that glare, wide, reflecting everything back, including fear. When the thunder hit close, the older elephant startled and swung her head. A handler yanked hard, too hard, and the chain on the gate rattled. The crowd laughed at first, like it was part of the act. Then the older elephant let out a roar that turned the laughter into silence. Joe said that sound wasn't anger. It was a warning. Something bad was coming. Behind the curtain, staff started shouting. Not at the crowd, at each other. Joe saw a trailer door slam and a truck engine catch. The older elephant was pulled off stage first, moving backward, resisting, trunk stretched toward the younger one. The younger elephant tried to follow, but someone swung a panel between them, metal and glass, quick as a knife. Megan's stomach tightened as Joe spoke. In her mind, she could see Luna's trunk pressed to the observation pane, reaching for a shape she couldn't touch. Joe said the younger elephant froze when the barrier went up. She stared at the wet concrete where the floodlights threw a perfect reflection. Two elephants side by side, except one was being dragged away in real life. That's when it happened, Joe said. The younger elephant stepped forward and saw herself in the shining water and glass, saw her own face framed by chaos, and realized the other elephant wasn't beside her anymore. Not in the world above the floor, anyway. Only in the reflection. The mirror didn't just show her a stranger. It showed her the exact second she became the one left behind. Megan went quiet, feeling the logic click into place with a sick kind of clarity. Luna wasn't reacting to a new image. She was reliving an old one with perfect detail. When the sun hit the panel at the center and turned it into a mirror, it recreated that stage. The glare, the flat shine, the sense that something beloved might vanish if she looked away. Outside, Luna moved closer to the curtain-covered glass again, as if the conversation inside had tugged her by an invisible thread. Her trunk reached for the same point to the left, the place where another elephant should stand. She made a low, searching rumble, steady, patient, heartbreaking. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a roll call to a name that never answered. Eli stood at the fence, watching her with a helpless expression. He'd always thought Luna's strength was her size, her calm, the way she endured. Now he saw her strength was something else. She kept walking up to the place that hurt her, again and again, like her mind believed persistence could rewrite the past. Every approach was hope. Every recoil was grief. Dr. Megan stepped out into the yard's edge and didn't cross the line. She only spoke soft enough that Luna might choose to hear it. "You're safe," she said, not certain the words could reach that far. Luna didn't turn, but her breathing slowed a fraction, as if the present was knocking gently on the door of the past. The sun dipped lower, and the bright edge of reflection faded to a dull sheen. Luna finally took one step back from the panel, then another, still staring as if she couldn't bear to lose the image completely. The yard felt quieter, not healed, but paused. Megan looked at the curtain track and knew the next choice would be the hardest one, because now they understood what the mirror really was. The following morning, the center held a meeting in the small break room that smelled like coffee and disinfectant. Dr. Megan laid out the facts without drama. Luna's distress wasn't random, and the mirror wasn't just a surface. Across the table, the safety coordinator tapped a pen and said the simple thing everyone feared. "Remove it." Eli kept his eyes on his hands. He'd watched Luna's panic build like a wave, and knew one wrong moment could turn into broken bars or a broken leg. Still, the idea of taking the panel away felt like shutting a door on her face. Old Joe sat back, quiet, letting the younger folks talk first, like an old referee. The arguments went in circles. One side said triggers should be eliminated, period. The other side said avoidance wasn't healing, just hiding. Dr. Megan didn't raise her voice. She only asked a question that landed heavy. If she can't look at herself without reliving that night, what happens the next time she sees her reflection in water? They moved to the yard with a plan that was more careful than brave. No test, no crowd, no bright glare. The curtain would stay half down, and the panel would be angled so it wasn't a full mirror. Luna would control the distance. If she wanted to stand 20 feet away and just breathe, that would count as progress. Eli became the anchor, the familiar thing in the same place every day. He carried a burlap sack, a slow-feeding hay net, a bucket of apples. Tools of comfort, not bribery, Dr. Megan told him. Not to lure Luna closer. "Let her choose," she said. "Choice is how you give someone back their body." Luna approached the yard's center like she was walking into a storm she could smell but not see. She stopped far from the panel and stood with her head slightly turned, watching it from the corner of her eye. Her ears were lifted, but not flared. Her trunk hung low, then curled in, then relaxed again, like her nervous system was negotiating with itself. For a long time nothing happened. The staff held still, learning how loud silence could be. Luna's breath slowed. The rumble in her chest softened from a call into something closer to thought. Old Joe nodded once, almost proud, as if he'd just seen a child take a first step without falling. Then the curtain shifted in a light breeze, and the panel flashed a brighter strip of reflection. Luna's body tightened in an instant. She took one step forward, then froze, eyes sharp, as if the past had lifted its head and looked right at her. Eli murmured her name, the way you'd say it to keep someone from slipping on ice. Dr. Megan raised a hand, and the tech locked the curtain in place, so it wouldn't flutter again. "Steady," she breathed. Luna didn't bolt. She didn't charge. She simply stood there, trembling, holding her ground like it took everything she had. That small act, staying, felt bigger than any puzzle she'd ever solved. Over the next few days, Luna built a routine like a fence around her fear. Every morning she returned to that same spot, the safe distance, the same angle. Some days she only watched for 5 minutes before walking away. Other days she stayed an hour, eyes fixed, ears slowly lowering, muscles uncoiling one thread at a time. On the 4th day, she did something nobody expected. She took 2 careful steps closer, paused, and backed up again, testing the boundary like a person dipping a toe into cold water. Eli didn't cheer. Dr. Megan didn't speak. They let the moment pass without grabbing it, because grabbing it was how you turn progress into pressure. By the end of the first week, Luna stood close enough that the shape in the panel became clear again. She lifted her trunk, not as a weapon, but as a question. Her trunk tip hovered at the glass, then touched it once, light, almost polite. She pulled back and exhaled, and her breath fogged the surface like a soft veil. What came next made Dr. Megan's throat tighten. Luna didn't press where her own face was. She reached to the left, an empty space beside her reflection, and placed her trunk there with careful precision. She held it, still and steady, as if she were touching the outline of someone who wasn't there anymore, refusing to let the spot disappear. Eli felt a sting behind his eyes and looked away so no one would see. Old Joe lowered his chin, silent, as if offering a kind of respect. Luna stepped back on her own, calm enough to leave the panel without panic, and walked to the shade. She didn't look fixed, not even close, but for the first time, the mirror didn't win the whole day. 2 weeks after the new protocol began, a transport truck rolled into the center just after sunrise. The staff moved quietly, the way people do when they know fear can spread. Inside the trailer was a small elephant calf, gray and thin, with a torn ear and eyes too wide for her face. Her paperwork said Pip, found after a highway accident that took the rest of her group. Luna heard the first muffled trumpet before anyone opened the gate. Her head lifted, ears angling forward, body going still in a way Eli recognized as attention, not alarm. She didn't rush. She stood at the far end of her yard, listening, as if weighing whether this new sound belonged to danger or to someone who needed her. When Pip stepped onto the sand, she froze at the sight of open space, then flinched at a shallow puddle left from the hose line. The puddle caught a pale, shaky reflection. Pip jerked back and let out a sharp, panicked squeal. She circled twice, searching for an exit that wasn't there, and her little trunk curled tight to her chest like a fist. Dr. Megan's team expected Luna to keep her distance. She didn't. Luna walked to the shared fence line and stopped, not crowding Pip, just placing her massive body where Pip could see her. Pip's eyes flicked up, startled by Luna's size, then softened when Luna lowered her head slightly, a calm gesture that said, "I'm not here to take anything from you." Pip edged toward the water trough, and then recoiled, terrified of the glimmer on the surface. Luna stepped closer to the fence and angled her body so her shadow fell across the puddle, dimming the reflection. It was a small thing, almost accidental, but it changed the moment. Pip's breathing slowed enough for her to look down without bolting. Eli watched with his mouth slightly open. Luna wasn't just tolerating a new animal. She was adjusting the environment, the way older elephants do in the wild, placing themselves between a calf and the thing that scares it. Her trunk reached through the bars as far as it could, not to grab, but to hover near Pip's shoulder, like an offered hand. Pip leaned away at first, trembling, then took one hesitant step closer. Luna didn't touch her yet. She waited until Pip's panic dropped into something else. Uncertainty, curiosity, a fragile kind of hope. When Luna finally brushed her trunk along Pip's back, it was feather-light, a reassurance delivered in a language older than words. That afternoon, Pip wandered near the observation panel by accident and locked up. The curtain was half down, like always, but a bright strip still caught the sun. Pip saw the shape in it and squealed again, stumbling backward. Dr. Megan raised her hand to stop everyone from moving. If they rushed in, Pip would run. If Pip ran, Luna might follow. Luna moved first, calm as a slow tide. She walked to the panel and positioned herself beside Pip, shoulder to shoulder, but not pressing. In the glass, two elephants appeared, one large, one small, standing where only one had stood before. Pip's eyes darted between the reflection and Luna's real body, trying to make sense of the double world. Luna lifted her trunk and did something that made Eli's chest ache. She touched the left side of the panel, the same empty space she'd marked days earlier, but this time it wasn't empty. Pip's reflection stood there, trembling, alive. Luna held her trunk there, like she was saying, "See, someone can stand here. Someone can stay." Pip's breathing hitched, then steadied. She watched Luna's reflection move exactly with Luna's body, and realized the other elephant wasn't a threat. It was an image, a copy, a harmless echo. Pip inched closer, and when her own trunk rose, Luna waited until Pip chose the touch. Pip tapped the glass once, then pulled back, startled but not shattered. The yard stayed quiet. No cheering, no sudden voices, just the soft scrape of feet in sand and the steady sound of two animals sharing space. Dr. Megan's eyes filled, and she didn't bother to hide it. She wasn't watching a test. She was watching a transfer of courage, the way one heart can steady another without ever speaking. As dusk warmed the fence lines, Pip finally drank, lowering her face toward the water instead of lifting it away. Luna stood nearby, not hovering, simply present. When Pip caught her own reflection on the surface, she didn't scream. She blinked, looked up at Luna, and took another sip like she had decided the world might be safe enough to stay in. Later, under the first stars, Luna walked past the panel and gave it a brief glance. She didn't search for a missing shadow. She didn't press her trunk to a ghost. In the dim glass, she saw two elephants and understood the difference between then and now. The other elephant was never an intruder. It was the doorway she feared, until it became the doorway she walked through. If Luna's story hit you in the heart, do me a quick favor. Drop a comment with just 0 if you believe facing fear is the first step to healing, or 1 if you think some memories should stay buried. I read every single one. And if you want more true, emotional animal stories like this, stories that start with a shock and end with hope, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one.